Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic of Columbia. I'm David Wilson, coming to you from my home here in Nashville in the 615. That's Calvin White, repping the A up in Montgomery County and Clarksville. We're happy to be joining you for the next 2 hours as we talk local, regional, and national sports topics. We're glad to do it on a beautiful day here in the mid-state. The sun is shining. I walked outside with a short sleeve shirt on. I believe it's 70 degrees right now here in Nashville. So it's a beautiful day in the middle of November as we are a week Turkey Day in the holiday season. So Calvin, hope your Wednesday is off to a good start and hope you're doing well so far.
Yeah, it's going good. Just wrapped up some basketball stuff from last night this morning. We got basketball started a little early over here in Clarksville and Robertson County. And, like you said, it's supposed to be warmer the rest of the week. But, I think right now it still says it's supposed to get a little bit of rain on Friday. So hopefully that goes away and we don't get any problems with any quarterfinal football games we have to attend and cover this week.
Well, I don't want to speak out of turn for the one lone team left in Wilson County on the slate, but I don't think and Coach Josh Crouch wouldn't mind a little rain on Friday night to maybe slow down Oakland, the matchup that I will be at on Friday night. More of that probably later in the program. Calvin mentioned it. It's sports writers' kind of nightmare slash dream at the same time this kind of year. We're saying goodbye to certain sports. We said goodbye to girls soccer and to volleyball and to cross country as well for the girls and boys side. We welcomed in basketball starting on Monday, so we have a loaded slate of scores. As last night, the TLSA Hall of Fame game, annual classics really across the state got the contest going, so we have a lot of scores to dive into, not only on the girls' side, but the boys' side as well. Calvin mentioned as well, though, we have some quarterfinal football to be played on Friday across the state, semifinals, or if you are in the private school sector. So it is a fun time if you're a sports fan. Also, don't forget wrestling is underway. Blaine Keller up in Sumner County had a great story about Portland taking to the mat for the first time in school history last night. So a lot of good stuff going on in the mid-state. We got a good show for you guys on deck today. In the second hour, in the 320 window, Blaine Keller, as we mentioned, friend of the show, good friend of ours as well, co-worker from Main Street Media. He'll join us to talk a little bit of Titans ahead of their Sunday matchup with the Seattle Seahawks down at Nissan Stadium. The Titans' wide receivers core is definitely depleted, to say the least. Last Sunday against the Texans, they lost Calvin Ridley to the year with a broken fibia. Also, Chimere Dike went into the injury tent with an injury in Io Manor as well. So we'll ask, who in the heck is Cam Ward going to be throwing the football to on Sunday? So Blaine will have all the details there. Coming up here in the 220 window, friend of the show, voice of the Blue Raiders, Chip Walters, is up in Ann Arbor as the Blue Raiders boys basketball team is set to take on the number 7 team in the land tonight. That is the Michigan Wolverines. You can find that one at 5:30 on the Big Ten Network. We'll get Chip's insight on that matchup as well as the Blue Raiders football team. They will host Sam Houston State on Saturday at Johnny Floyd Stadium in Murfreesboro as they continue to close out their campaign under second-year head coach Derek Mason. We'll also jump into the grab bag in that second hour to kick off the second hour in the 3 o'clock window. Got a lot of news and notes from across the world of sports, including from the NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball as well, which was in the news with a big trade last night in the American League and a new TV deal that's set to be announced as well. And to close out the first hour of the show in that 245 to 250 window, we'll talk some college hoops. It was a big night last night up in the Garden in New York City. It was a State Farm Classic where Michigan State took on Kentucky and Duke took on Kansas as those annual meetings happened in the State Farm Classic, this time in the Big Apple. Calvin, it's a jam-packed show. We're excited to have you guys on board with us for the ride. So, Calvin, let's jump right into it with last night's scores and today's schedule on the rundown.
This is the Rundown.
So let's play girls basketball action from across the mid-state last night. Upperman picked up a 66-53 win over the Brentwood Lady Bruins. It was CPA defeating Goodpasture over on West Due West Avenue, 52-25. It was Lebanon and Coach Corey Barrett picking up a 49-27 win over Cannon County last night. Mount Juliet made large to Calvin's neck of the woods, and the Golden Bears picked up a 54. It was Clarksville Academy defeating County Central out of Kentucky, 71-28. It was Columbia Central picking up a 55-49 win over visiting Siegel. It was Columbia Academy downing Riverside Christian, 55-23. It was Forest defeating Culleoka, 49-42. It was DCA all over BGA last night, 72-51. It was Davidson Academy picking up a 55-27 win over Franklin Christian. Murfreesboro Central Magnet defeated Eagleville 47-33. It was Houston County 54, East Hickman 39. Cheatham County all over Fairview 44-17. It was Green Hill going to Williamson County and defeating Franklin last night 56-47. It was Franklin Road Academy all over Maplewood 88-22, the final score there. It was Page defeating Giles County 86-39. Stewart's Creek defeated Grace Christian Franklin 34 down off of Lever's Fork. It was Ezel Harding 80, Harpeth 14. Hillsboro defeated Martin Luther King 73-21. It was Hunters Lane 44, Glencliff 30. Rockville defeated Independence 44-39. It was Overton defeating Hume Falk 66-17. It was Lawrence County defeating Colbert County, Alabama 70-37. It was Liberty Creek defeating Clarksville Northeast 73-12. Macon County defeated Station Camp 37-21. It was Marshall County edging past Battle Creek 58-54. Middle Tennessee Christian picked up a win over Notre Dame 81-73. It was Stewart County defeating Montgomery Central 58-26. Nolensville defeated Hendersonville. Final score there 57-26. Tullahoma defeated Oakland 43-32. Warren County defeated Ravenwood 48-39. It was Rossview defeating Kenwood 53-33. Cornersville defeated Santa Fe 51, Smyrna all over Centennial 47-14. Sycamore defeated Robertson County team Springfield 42-33. It was Summit 62, Riverdale 42. Antioch defeated the University School of Nashville 41-35. Dixon County defeated Waverly 64-39. White House defeated Stratford 63-58. In the Robertson County duel, it was Greenbrier 54, White House Heritage 50. And Wilson Central last night defeated James Lawson. There's coverage here on the Chronicle of Mount Juliet website and the Wilson Post website as well. 59-33, the final score there. And if you want some coverage of Mount Juliet's win over Clarksville as well, that is on the Wilson County Post website and the Chronicle of Mount Juliet as well.
You take a break while I get to these boys' scores. Boys' scores from last night: Marshall County 65-43 over Battle Creek. Brentwood wins 62-59 over Upperman. Good Pasture down CPA 56-51. It was Cannon County 79, Lebanon 64. Clarksville wins 71-26 over Mount Juliet. Siegel downs Columbia 68-67 in a nail biter. Columbia Academy wins 81-37 over Riverside Christian. It was Forest 71, Culleoka 60. BGA 47, DCA 35. Eagleville wins 75-34 over Murfreesboro Central Magnet. Houston County wins in a 1-point win, 60-59 over East Hickman. Fairview wins 52-35 over Cheatham County. Green Hill fell to Franklin 50-42. Franklin Road Academy wins 61-53 over Maplewood. Friendship Christian wins 61-50 over Clarksville Northwest. Page beats Giles County 63-41. Stewart's Creek 71, Grace Christian Franklin 60. Harpeth 61, Ezel Harding 48. Hillsboro wins 59-50 over Martin Luther King. Hunters Lane 68-49 over Glencliff. Independence 58-54 winners over Rockvale. Hume Fogg wins 59-51 over John Overton. Pope John Paul II wins 67-37 over Lead Academy. It was Colbert County out of Alabama 49-47 over Lawrence County. Liberty Creek wins 77-42 over Clarksville Northeast. Lipscomb Academy 63, Webb School 31. Macon County 69-52 over Republic. Merrill Hyde 68-45 over Christian Community. Middle Tennessee Christian wins 52-44 over Notre Dame. Montgomery Central 63-58 winners over Stewart County. McCauley wins 87-35 over Nashville Christian. Nolensville 61-40 over Hendersonville. It was Tullahoma 54, Oakland 49. Kirkwood wins 70-63 over Providence Christian. Warren County wins 44-43 over Ravenwood. Rossview wins 53-41 over Kenwood. Santa Fe 69, Cornersville 63. Smyrna 79, Centennial 77. Springfield wins 62-53 over Sycamore. Summit 63-37 winners over Riverdale. The University School of Nashville wins 57-49 over Antioch. Watertown 56, River Christian Academy 38. Dixon County 46-42 winners over Waverly. White House down Stratford 58-55. It was White House Heritage 87, Greenbrier 31. And finally, James Lawson wins 69-63 over Wilson Central.
In women's basketball action last night, it was Bethel defeating Fisk 79-42. It was Cumberland defeating Indiana Southeast 75-69. Men's basketball action up in Kentucky, it was Cumberland defeating Brescia 74-71. It was Ole Miss defeating Austin Peay by 7 down in Oxford 72-65. In the NBA, my San Antonio Spurs went to Shelby County and defeated the Memphis Grizzlies 111-101. Tonight's skins basketball action is Kentucky West Trevecca. That is a 1 o'clock tip. That game is already underway on the Hill in Nashville. Lipscomb takes on ESPN. Plus, it's North Alabama at Tennessee State University, 6 p.m. tip on ESPN Plus as well. Tonight up in Bowling Green, Shea Ralph and the Vanderbilt Commodores make the trip to take on Western Kentucky and the Hilltoppers, 6:30 tip on ESPN Plus. And men's basketball action, we'll talk to Chip Walters about this one shortly. It's MTSU up in Ann Arbor to take on the number 7 team in the land. 5:30 tip between the Blue Raiders and the Wolverines on the Big Ten Network. Tonight, also, Battle of the Boulevard, Lipscomb at Belmont, 7:30 on ESPN+. Ladies and gentlemen, those are your scores. That was your schedule, and that concludes today's rundown. Your top story is brought to you by the good folks at Piggly Wiggly and Neely's Mill in Columbia. They're open 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. Be sure to stop by and check out their delicious daily lunch options. They also offer hand-cut meats, and everything is cost plus 10% at the cash register. Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Mill in Columbia. Presenting you our top story, and this has been a frequent theme the last couple weeks on Wednesdays, as we know that on Tuesdays nights on ESPN around 7 o'clock, College Football Playoff Committee has released their annual CFP rankings ahead of Selection Sunday here in a few weeks. There's your look at the latest bracket after Week 13 of the college football schedule. Now, note the matchups: Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Georgia are the top 4 teams. They would get buys automatically to the quarterfinal round, as you can see on your screen there. Texas Tech would host Tulane in the hypothetical first round, the Tulane being the group of 5 champion that is being projected by the bracket. You have Oklahoma and Notre Dame 8-9. Oklahoma, big win this past weekend in Tuscaloosa over the Alabama Crimson Tide, who slipped down to number 10 in the CFP rankings behind Notre Dame, even though Alabama has 4 wins on its schedule over top 25 teams right now, compared to Notre Dame's just 1, which would be USC. We see Miami making it back into the projection. They are projected as the ACC champion as of right now. They would take on Ole Miss in the Grove, who's the 6th seed. And we mentioned Alabama. They would make the trip out to Eugene, Oregon, to take on the Oregon Ducks, who are the number 7 team in the committee's rankings. And Calvin, I mentioned it, and this was a very hot topic of discussion on social media last night. When you look at Alabama's resume, they have 2 losses on their schedule. One obviously to Oklahoma this past weekend, and in their first game of the season, they got beat by double digits down in Tallahassee to a Florida State team that's kind of fell off the wagon here of late. But they have really good wins. You could argue they have one of the best wins in the country going into Athens to defeat the Georgia Bulldogs. They've also Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Tennessee, who are in the top 25. So what do you make of Alabama slipping to number 10 in the rankings behind Notre Dame, who has just 1 top 25 win over USC, as I mentioned, and losses to Texas A&M by 1 point and to Miami by a field goal?
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame's got close losses to some good teams, and outside of Florida State, Oklahoma's a good team, um, and I mean that if this was the real bracket, this would really stink for Indiana having to play the winner of the Alabama Oregon game. Um, but I think no matter what has happened with both of them, they're still two of the best teams in the country. Obviously, I think both of them have a realistic shot at winning the national championship. But this isn't real. But Notre Dame, that Notre Dame Ohio State game would, obviously be a rematch of last year's national championship game. But both really good teams, and I think both, despite the rankings, still have a shot to win the whole thing.
I have a feeling there's going to be some movement here. Obviously, Miami has a tough challenge the next couple weeks. They have to play Pitt up in Pittsburgh at Acrisure Stadium to close out their season. Alabama has the Iron Bowl, which they have trouble at Jordan Hare Stadium, so we will see how that goes. Oklahoma has matchups against Missouri and LSU to close their season. We have to remember that Texas A&M has to play Texas on Black Friday next week. So there's potential for some chaos and some movement here. Let's not remember or let's remember rather that Georgia has to play Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech this year. They went to several overtimes last year, so there feels like there's going to be some movement here. I think we can pretty much set in stone that Ohio State and Indiana are going to meet in the Big Ten championship. But there could be some chaos here. Notre Dame has to play Syracuse and Stanford to close its season. So you feel like the Irish, obviously heavy favorites over the Orange and the Cardinal. It feels like they're in a scenario where they can win their last two games and make the playoff. There's also been some rumblings, though. How can Miami find Notre Dame in the rankings when they have the same identical record and Miami has a 3-point win over Notre Dame to start the year? I can understand all that. As the resident Notre Dame fan, though, I will say that Notre Dame is probably one of the hotter teams in college football right now. And with their improved defense, I don't think anybody would want to play them. Coming up here on the show, as we've reached the time for our first commercial break, friend of the show, the voice of the Blue Raiders, Chip Walters is up in Ann Arbor. He's ready to preview the upcoming matchup tonight as the MTSU Blue Raiders take on the Michigan Wolverines in basketball action and men's hoops at 5:30 on the Big Ten Network. We're interested and excited to get Chip's perspective on what is the keys for an upset for the home team here in Murfreesboro. We'll talk to Chip Walters, the voice of the Blue Raiders, next here on Main Street Sports Today. So stick with us.
The winning just got closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mint Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs.
Winning just got closer.
This holiday season, the largest lantern festival in the country returns to Nashville Zoo. Experience more than 1,000 all-new handcrafted lanterns, towering creatures, magical worlds, and a North Pole village. At the center of it all, the Smashville Ice Rink. Welcome back to Zoolumination at Nashville Zoo. Bigger, brighter, and better than ever.
Busy bee, yeah, busy bee. If you need
Hold on, y'all, hold on. I need to make a call. Hey, this is Brianna with Busy Bee. I'm giving you a call to let you know your technician is on his way.
333.
Busy bee. Guys, not yet. Not yet.
Busy bee, oh,
Now
busy
ready,
bee.
guys.
Call 77578.
Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
Welcome back into Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Day, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. Waiting for Chip Walters to join us from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Is MTSU Blue Raiders basketball team or men's basketball team for that instance takes on the Michigan Wolverines tonight on the Big Ten Network at 5:30. A very highly anticipated match. Raiders as they take on the number 7 team in the land. And that Calvin, they have had a nice start to their schedule. I'm excited to talk to Chip about this. They are 3-0, gotten off to a really good start, some big wins with some monster offensive performances, coming off a road win against Evansville as well. So this is a nice test for the Blue Raiders to see where they stand against a really quality opponent.
Yeah, like you said, they got a big win over Evansville the other day. That's kind of been the knock on Nick McDevitt during his time in Murfreesboro, was that he can't win away from the Murphy Center. So that was obviously a big win to go up there and get a 5-point win. They got 17 points, or at least 17 points from 3 different players. And we saw what Michigan did last week against Wake Forest, blew a big lead and took it to overtime, pulled out a win, but, went to overtime with a Wake Forest team that doesn't, look very great to begin the year. But, Michigan's got a player in Yaxel Lindeberg that MTSU is very familiar with, having, played UAB a bunch over the last couple of years. I don't think many people necessarily expect an upset win, but I'd say it's a very good measuring stick for where you're at right now, 4 games into the season.
Well, and it can prepare you for Conference USA play, which is the goal, right? You're trying to be your best when it comes to February, when it comes to March, and prepare yourself for a run to a potential regular season championship in the Conference USA and potentially a tournament championship as well. Obviously, MTSU has beefed up their schedule. Playing Michigan, we know that they're going to make a trip down to play Houston as well. So, I mean, these are good matchups, right? They can prepare you and make you better. So, really interested to see where the Blue Raiders stack up tonight. I'm gonna probably flip this one on and just watch. Obviously, there's some really good players for MTSU. So we're excited to talk to Chip about that, who should be joining us now, almost set and ready to go. We know Chip is in. We appreciate him joining us on some late notice. Obviously, he has a busy schedule as he's preparing for tonight's tip up in Michigan at 5:30. Once again, you can find that one on the Big Ten Network. Mark, just give us the green light when Chip is ready to go, and it looks like he is now. Chip, join us from the hotel. Good. Got a big matchup tonight up in Ann Arbor as the MTSU Blue Raiders take on the Michigan Wolverines. I know you're excited about this one. Kind of give us your feel and your early thoughts on the matchup.
Well, it's a great opportunity for Middle. You're playing with house money. You come to the basketball version of the big house. It's literally right next door to Michigan Stadium. But Michigan has they've had a couple of tough games, but the thing is they have gutted out an overtime game against Wake Forest, and then coming off a really good win on the road at TCU. And this team is huge, by the way. They'll start 6'10", 6'10", 7'3" along their front line, along with a couple of very capable guards, and one of those big guys is a guy that we're familiar with in Yaxel Lindeborg, who was at UAB a couple of years ago, and he's he's coming off let me make sure I get this right, 14 point, 10 rebound, 4 assist and 3 block, or 14.10 rebound. Yeah. Uh, 4 assist and 3 blocks against TCU. So, he's a guy that can really do a lot of things and stuff the stat sheet. But as I heard you guys talking about, this is one of 2 games that Middle will go on the road to top 10 ball clubs. The game at Houston on December 29th, and it's kind of unusual in this current world of college basketball to where a Conference USA team will get the opportunity to play a quad one. When you start looking at the net rankings, it's funny. All the SEC teams are told do not play quad 2 and quad 3 schools, which most of your Conference USA, most of your Sun Belt schools, most of your Mountain West schools are going to fall into quad 2 or 3 somewhere. Now, the SEC for sure does not like to play quad 2 and quad 3 schools. They either want to play other quad 1s, which are other Power 4 conferences, or they want to play the quad 4s, which are the conferences where you can go out and win by 50. And the thing is, the teams in quad 2 and 3 a lot of times are good enough to give you a scare, depending on what your matchup is and all of that. But you've got last year we had the opportunity to go to Tennessee, and that came from a personal relationship between Middle's coaching staff and Rick Barnes and such. And same thing here. Michigan needed a game, and they were looking for a home game in November, and looking to pay a nice little price tag to bring in an opponent. And so Dusty May and Nick McDevitt, when Dusty was at FAU and taking them into the Final Four, they hit it off and became buddies back in the day. And so they've stayed in touch ever since, and compare notes, help each other out. Hey, have you seen this team play, or you seen that team play, or what about that player, this player, especially in this age of transfers and all of that. So when they needed a game, first call he made was to Coach McDevitt, and tonight I think is going to be about a $90,000 payoff, and it's going to be similar going down to Houston. But yeah, it's a great opportunity. I just got through doing my pregame interview with Coach McDevitt, and I think he's got the right attitude about it. He goes, you don't have to be perfect in everything to win. He goes, but there are certain things that you have to be perfect at. You have to have a perfect attitude. You have to have perfect effort. Things like the controllables, and understand that Michigan will have, they'll probably have a couple of Sports Center highlight type plays tonight, but have a short memory, go to the next play, that kind of thing. So, it'll be interesting to see how this team handles it. The win last Wednesday at Evansville was I thought a really good win, led by as much as 22, held off a late run by the home team. And you'll play today, and then you'll turn around and head down to the Cayman Islands for 3 games against 3 good teams that are very much like yourself: Murray State, McNeese State, and George Washington next week. So it's on, and tonight we'll be there. And matter of fact, we'll leave the hotel here in about an hour and 15 minutes, head over, and had a practice over there last night, had a shoot around today. So it's a busy week in Blue Raider country, playing ranked opponents on both the men and the women this week.
Chip, the team's got a really tough non-conference schedule, and Nick's always been very vocal about how hard it is for teams like MTSU to get games like your Michigans and your Houstons. And obviously, like you mentioned, the Michigan game came from a personal connection. But when teams like Middle can actually get those games, do those ones kind of toughen you up a little bit more than maybe going to play your Murray States and your Evansvilles?
Well, it probably, but I think the Murray State, Evansville, McNeese, George Washington are a more true test. I mean, yeah, tonight will toughen you up because if you don't, you're going to get rolled up under the basket. I mean, there's no question about that. But I think a true test of where you are comes in the games against the Evansvilles and next week, and then later on against UAB and Belmont. That will both be coming into Murphy Center. So, it'll be fun tonight, and it's almost 39 years exactly since Middle faced Michigan in basketball and beat them down in Birmingham. It was a team that included Big Kerry Hammonds, Kerry Sr., Dwayne Washington, trying to think who else. Andrew Tunstall was probably on that team. Dwayne Washington went on, played in the NBA for a little bit, but Middle went out and beat a Michigan team that had Glenn Rice, Gary Grant, Loy Vaught, Antoine Jobert, really good team down at a 4-team tournament in Birmingham. So, I mean, the precedent's there. It can be done. It's kind of like Middle in Miami in football. Middle's never lost to Miami in football, and they played multiple times, including 3 years ago down in Miami. But just go out, have a good time, and control what you can, and go out and represent yourself and your school very well.
Chip, through the first 3 games, you mentioned the win last week, or Evansville wins over Milligan and Webster as well. This team has been very balanced in its scoring. 5 guys averaging in double figures, obviously led by Kamari Lands with 17 points a game, and Javin Carter with nearly 15. Just kind of talk about the offensive success that they've been able to have through the first 3 games and how they can probably hope to continue that tonight versus Michigan, maybe as a key to an upset.
Well, and I think this team's part of their DNA is that they should be a good shooting basketball team, and it'll take a good shooting night. I mean, you kind of got to go above and beyond tonight because, I mean, Chris Loof is going to have his hands full in the post tonight. So, Kamari, who is a 3-level scorer, has got to get off to a good start, and that's the thing he's done in all 3 games is he has come out and played very well in the opening minutes and opening halves of all 3 games. Javin Carter, he's Middle's. I say he's their 6th starter because the way they're using him right now, they're starting Sean Smith at the point, and they're bringing Javin Carter in off the bench and using kind of a 3-headed guard monster to rotate and spell each other. And Ja has been great with his role, and he is and when you can have him in that role coming off the bench and you don't lose anything, and sometimes you actually gain something by that person coming in, you've got something going, and this team has been, you feel like their guard should be really good, and the post players are developing. Torrey Alston needs to be good tonight, and Middle's going to have to rebound because I remember one of the things that struck me tonight or today at the shoot around, they were talking about how important it's going to be to rebound because Michigan, with their size, they're sending 3 and 4 guys to the glass on every play on both ends of the floor. And Coach McDevitt said, somebody's going to take a hit on every play. He goes, we don't have to take them all. Let's deliver some of those, and tag some guys and get in there and rebound, because some of Michigan's best offense this year in certain critical stages of games has been throw it up there and go get it. And that's kind of how they got through some of the tough times in their games with Wake Forest and against TCU. So it's going to take a really, really good effort tonight to win on the road, but should be a lot of fun.
Chip, one last thing for me before we, wrap it up. Even though football lost this past weekend, Roman Gagliano kind of really had his coming out party. Just, with Nick Vadiato out, what was it like up there watching Roman Gagliano have his coming out party against your biggest rival?
You talk about guys who go out having fun. Like Roman looked like he was just he looked like there was no pressure on him. We talked to him after the game and asked him about that. He goes, "Heck, I've been playing football since I was 8 years old, and every field I've ever played on is 53 1/3 yards wide." He goes, "I just looked at it like that and went." The thing that he, sometimes when you're young and you don't know, what to worry about, you can go out there with a clean conscience and just play. And I thought that's what he did. But, we were noticing too, he really, he's got a strong arm. We knew that. And he kept looking downfield and thought that's where, in his way of playing the game, he thought that's where the plays were there to be made. And when you look at it, Middle had up through the previous game, up through the Jacksonville State game, Middle had 28 explosive plays on offense, which are 20 or more yards. They had 28 through the first 9 games. In week 10, they had 10. So they had nearly a third of as many offensive play or explosive plays in the Western Kentucky game as they did, all year long. And some of that was with his legs, some of that was with his arm, and you had DJ Taylor coming in. There were some unknowns for Western's defense because Middle did not put it out there that they were going to. It got out late, I guess, that Roman was going to start, and also that and that you were going to have a change in running back, that you'd had an injury there. So, I thought this game had a different feel about it, and so you need to kind of bottle that and uncork it again this week, because you've got a Sam Houston team coming in who has faced a lot of the same travails that your team has faced, although they've kind of gotten it together in the last couple of weeks and put together back-to-back wins, including a win at Oregon State. So it's senior day, and it's your last home game of the season, so don't leave anything out on the field. Take it all with you.
With Chip, the voice of the MTSU Blazers. You can find him on Twitter or X at Choose Chip. Chip, then tomorrow night as well down at the Murphy Center, as the MTSU Lady Blue Raiders host the Tennessee Lady Ball. Murphy Center. Kind of give us your thoughts on that matchup. Obviously, it's going to be probably a packed Murphy Center. Caldwell and the Lady Balls come calling.
Yeah, it will be, and there's they've already. I think the lower bowl is sold out or close to it, so there may be some singles here and there, but all the bleachers will be out, so there's plenty of tickets left to be had. So don't let that hold you up. You may just have to sit up a little higher. Middle Tennessee's they're having to face something they haven't been used to in a little while, and that is they've lost 2 in a row. They lost at Tennessee Tech and at Rice, and now come in to face a 15th ranked Tennessee team that tries to run you till your tongue hangs out. And but Middle Tennessee's got to do what they can to control pace in this game, and not let Tennessee just make it a track meet, because that's one way Tennessee is. And Tennessee's not been over. They beat East Tennessee by 50, but only won by 11 at UT Martin in a road game there, and then had another somewhat close game here in the last 5 days or so. So, obviously Middle's going to give their Tennessee their best shot. Middle's still very, very young, but the youngsters are getting a little better and a little more aged every game that they're out there. But you think about a Blair Bogus, a young lady who grew up in Waynesboro, and every little girl in Tennessee at some point that played basketball thought about being a Lady Vol or in Blair's case, she's become a Lady Raider, and there's been a lot of those out there too, and so she's going to play with a lot of pride, and I don't sell Middle short. I think they'll have a good plan. It's can they keep the tempo to something that's doable? Don't get themselves in foul trouble early, and because that did happen in Knoxville last year. And but yeah, come on out, just have a good time. There's going to be a lot of divided households on this one, but there'll be a good bit of orange in the building. But I promise you, there's going to be a ton of blue in there, and it'll be a great atmosphere tomorrow night at the Glass House.
That's Chip Walters. You can listen to his golden tones this afternoon, or this evening rather, at 5:30 as the MTSU Blue Raiders take on the Michigan Wolverines up in Ann Arbor. Chip, we appreciate you taking some time on some short notice and talking to us. Hope you have a good call tonight. We'll see you here soon.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot.
Coming up here on the show after this commercial break, we'll dive college hoops. Is a big night up in the Madison Square Garden in New York last night for the State Farm Classic between Michigan State and Kentucky, and Duke and Kansas. We'll dive into those results and preview Vanderbilt's matchup against Western Kentucky tonight in the women's basketball action next here on Main Street Sports Today. So stick with us.
Columbia Power and Water Systems is dedicated to bringing our customers reliable, local service. Whether you're turning on a light switch, your faucet, or streaming on TV, our dedicated team members from here in Murray County work every day to keep you on. If you need us, call us 931-388-4833 or visit cpws.com. CPWS, local service, local support.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
Nashville's Nutcracker, presented by Nashville Ballet, returns to TPAC November 29th through December 28th. This holiday season, audiences will journey with Clara and the Nutcracker Prince through Nashville's history and the land of sweets. Tickets on sale at NashvilleBallet.com.
Back into Main Street Sports Today on a Wild and Wacky Wednesday, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. And with the college hoops themes, we just got done talking with Chip Walters, the voice of the MTSU Blue Raiders, as MTSU gets set to take on Michigan this afternoon or this evening at 5:30 on the Big Ten Network at the quote-unquote big house, you could say, next door to it in Ann Arbor. We'll stick with the college hoops theme. Last night up in New York, the State Farm Classic is always good. And Kansas play each other, Michigan State and Kentucky play each other as well. Last night, the Blue Devils defeated Kansas 78-66 to remain 5-0 or to move to 5-0 rather on its season. Kansas drops to 3-2 under head coach Bill Self. Cameron Boozer, what can we say about him? We've been singing his tones the last couple weeks. 18 points, 10 rebounds, a double double, or for the freshman standout who should be a lottery pick come next summer. Isaiah Evans poured in 16 for Duke as they moved to 5-0. Michigan State defeated Kentucky and moved to 4-0 on the season, 83 to 66 win. Spartans, Jackson Kohler with 20 points for head coach Tom Izzo. Calvin, I know you were out covering basketball last night, but it's always good when these, pair of teams in both games get to play. I mean, we get an early season test of what things look like when it comes to the blue bloods of the sport.
Yeah, it's one of the best things about the early part of the year is that these four are always going to get together and, give college basketball fans some high-level games early in the season. And, it seems like more often than not, there's always at least one of the games that is not close. And, Michigan State kind of did that to Kentucky last night. Michigan State hit, I think I read, more threes last night than they had in the rest of their games this season combined. I think Michigan State hit like 13 threes against Kentucky. And Kentucky just never responded. I think they were down 17 at halftime, and Michigan State just kind of coasted in the second half and still won it by, 15 or 17 points. And, Duke and Kansas, that was a lot closer game than I thought it was going to be, especially with Kansas not having Darren Peterson. But, you mentioned Cameron Boozer. He is the truth. If I think, he's for sure going to be a lottery pick, if not the number one pick. And just the level of freshmen that are playing in college basketball right now, there's five, six freshmen that are going to go easily in the lottery as long as they stay healthy in the NBA draft next year. But two good games, not necessarily on the court, but two big games between four high-level programs in the early part of the season is always good.
Yeah, I love it when we get to, this early part of November where the seasons is just getting underway and we see teams stretch out of conference play and, not necessarily playing cupcakes per se. I mean, you're going to throw a couple of those on your schedule. But I like it when you go and challenge yourself and play against fellow top 25 programs. We saw that with Purdue making the trip down to play Alabama. We saw it with Houston and Auburn getting together this past weekend. We saw it with Arizona and Florida in the season opener out on the West Coast. We're going to get it again tonight. It seems like it's the same teams that are challenging themselves night after night. Tonight on Fox Sports 1 at 6 o'clock tip, number 4 Arizona versus number 3 UConn in a battle of top 5 programs. And then in the nightcap on 8 p.m. on FS1, it's Alabama, who's the number 11 team in the land, taking on Illinois, who is number 8. Calvin, just a lot of good basketball. If you're a viewer on your screen, a lot of high-end talent. Arizona is a really, really good team. They defeated Florida in their first win of the season. And when they're taking on a Dan Hurley coach team, you know that it's going to be very entertaining, to say the least.
Yeah, Tommy Lloyd's had really good teams at Arizona. Every year he's been there, 4 or 5 years now. Was an assistant for Mark Few at Gonzaga for 20 years. And, Tommy Lloyd's had really good regular seasons, just hasn't been able to crack through in the NCAA tournament so far. But he's got another one of those really good freshmen, Koa Pete, who had, they were talking about it like it might be the best freshman debut ever against Florida in the season opener. And UConn's always been, well, not always, but, the last 3 or 4 years, UConn's just been a force under Dan Hurley. Obviously, those back-to-back national titles. And even last year's team was really good. They just ran into the eventual national champion in, I believe, the second round in Florida, and even gave Florida a scare in that second round. And the Alabama-Illinois game, that's two teams that like to run and gun, get up a lot of threes. Alabama's, it seems like they're always going to make, double-digit threes a night. That's what they want to do, and it's a really entertaining product. They get threes and layups, and if you're not on your P's and Q's against Alabama, they'll run you out of the gym. And so hopefully that Alabama-Illinois game will be a track meet, and we get two really good games tonight between four high-level programs.
Transitioning to the women's basketball side, we mentioned with Chip right there, a big matchup tonight here, or tomorrow night rather, down in Murfreesboro at the Murphy Center, where the UT Lady Vols and head coach Kim Caldwell. You want to talk about a team that runs and guns, that subs a lot, and plays its entire bench. She goes about 10 or 11 deep in her total rotation. They're going to travel take on the MTSU Blue Raiders. Calvin, I think this is a great matchup. I think what Tennessee has done this year is a great job in a sense of they played UT Martin, they're playing MTSU. They're stretching the state. Obviously, the Lady Vol brand is very well wide known. Obviously, dating back to the time with Pat Summitt, what she did here in the state of Tennessee, and basically made women's basketball the sport in the state of Tennessee. So a good matchup tomorrow night. I'm sure a lot of people down in the Murfreesboro area and the mid-state as a whole are excited to see MTSU and the Lady Vols square off at the Murphy Center tomorrow night.
Yeah, it was really exciting for the fans and students a couple years ago when they announced this 4-year series. Obviously, Kelly Harper was the one that scheduled it when she was still at Tennessee. She played AAU basketball for Rick Insell. So there was that relationship there. But, Pat Summitt always scheduled, or not always, but she was always more willing to schedule MTSU and the other teams around the state. Obviously, they played in Knoxville more than they did in Murfreesboro, but, it's all about scheduling the game and actually getting those two teams together. And, I was on hand when MTSU beat Tennessee down in Huntsville in the first game of the series a couple years ago. But, obviously there's no longer the relationship there with Kim Caldwell and Rick Insell. But you play the games that are on your schedule, it's going to be a packed house, like Chip said. It's been, a couple years, I want to say since Louisville a couple years ago, when a ranked team has come into the Glass House. And, hopefully for MTSU, they can pull off another upset like they did a couple years ago when they beat Louisville and Haley Van Lith by double digits.
It's a great opportunity for MTSU, as Chip kind of mentioned. They lost their last two games up at Tennessee Tech and to Rice, and it's very bold, I'll say, for Tennessee to go on the road to play a mid-major team like MTSU in the Glass House. Tennessee, quote unquote, has everything to lose. They're the more talented team, but playing a really well-coached MTSU team that has a lot of pride and a lot of history as well. They're very, very talented mid-major, and so Tennessee will have to bring its A game. And, they've kind of struggled to start the year. Struggled up at UT Martin, struggled against Belmont, a really good Belmont team who played really well for spurts against Oklahoma in their season opener. So Tennessee's still trying to find its footing. It has a very talented freshman class and a couple transfers as well, as we talked to Caleb Giroux a couple weeks ago. But they're going to have to learn how to piece things together, and matchups like this, making the trip down to Murfreesboro to take on Coach Insell's team, will help Kim Caldwell do that as she enters her second full season with Tennessee and her second year in SEC play, and a talented SEC that has South Carolina, that has LSU, that has Texas, that has Oklahoma. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, the depth of the men's conference last year. So many teams made the tournament last year on the men's side. It was, kind of chaos night after night because anybody could beat anybody. Well, the same could be said pretty much on the women's side as well. When you think about the depth of the conference in the SEC, you think about the teams that I mentioned that are ranked. Vanderbilt is ranked. Tennessee is ranked. Kentucky is ranked. I mean, the list goes on, and you have teams that are on the outside looking in of the top 25 as well. We mentioned Shea Ralph and the Vanderbilt Lady Commodores. They picked up a big commitment from Jay Johnson the other day, a 4-star recruit, to add to their incoming freshman class for next season. So I wanted to shout out the Commodores. Shea Ralph is doing some recruiting on the trail as well. They have a matchup tonight on the Hill, not Green Hill. They're going up to the Hill in Bowling Green, Kentucky, to take on the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. That is a tip-off this evening at 6:30 p.m. You can find that one on ESPN. Plus, Vanderbilt is off to a 4-0 start, I believe, on their season. Obviously, they have one of the best sophomores in the land and probably one of the best players in women's basketball altogether in Michaela Blakes. They've done a really good job through the first couple games. Aubrey Galvin is a freshman point guard that's really manning that controls there. Obviously, they returned Sasha Washington in the post after she dealt with some blood clot issues last year. They also have Justine Passat, who is a Tennessee transfer a couple years ago that's really stepped up for them. They lost Camille Pierre, who was one of their leading scorers last year, who formed a nice little tandem with Michaela Blake. She transferred this past season to North Carolina State to play for Westmore. But Vanderbilt is really finding its footing under Coach Shea Ralph, and they kind of stepped up over the last couple of years and taken a place in the SEC. And Mark Byington has done the same on the men's side as well, as they are undefeated as well to start their year. Coming up on the show as we reach here the 3 o'clock hour and insert into the second hour of the show, Blaine Keller, our co-worker from Main Street Media, will join us at 3:20 as we talk all things Titans ahead of their matchup on Sunday afternoon at high noon against the Seattle Seahawks, who are fresh off a loss to the Los Angeles Rams and are looking to get some revenge and let out some frustrations this week against the guys in the two-tone blue. Coming up here, though, after the commercial break, we'll dive into the latest edition of the Grab Bag. We have a thorough bag to dive into, Calvin. We got several news and notes across the world of MLB, the NFL, and the NBA as well, plus some college basketball notes, I believe, as well. So we'll dive into all those things next here on Main Street Sports Today. So stick with us on a Wild and Wacky Wednesday.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
Is your internet slowing you down? It's time for an upgrade. Whether you're at home, working from your home office, or at your business, it's time to unleash the speed you need with speeds up to 1 gig at CPWS for as low as $70 a month. Give us a call, 931-375-7777. Local service, local support, CPWS.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Back in second hour on a Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson here in Nashville, repping the Braves with the Drake Baldwin shirt after he won National League Rookie of the Year. That's Calvin White up in Montgomery County in Clarksville. He's repping the A on his head as we reach the 3 o'clock hour. It's time to dive into the latest edition of the Grab Bags. We talk some news and notes across the world of sports. We'll start things off in the MLB. First really big trade of the offseason last night, Calvin. was a little trade between American League, um, I guess, foes, counterparts, whatever you want to say, from the East Coast to the West Coast. And this is a trade that makes sense for both sides, Calvin. If you really think about it and think about the needs of each respective ball club, a player that's been kind of rumored to be on the trade block for the last year and a half was Taylor Ward of the Los Angeles Angels, and he has now been shipped from the West Coast to the East Coast, as he is now a member of the Baltimore Orioles, who ship really highly regarded pitching prospect, a guy who's spent some time in the rotation over the last couple of years. Grayson Rodriguez goes back in return to Los Angeles, as Baltimore, looking to fill some of its offensive holes, requires an outfielder that hits really well, and the Angels, looking to add some pitching depth to its rotation, does that. Grayson Rodriguez is 26 years old and has 4 more years team control on his contract. He's a number 11 overall pick out of high school in 2018. Showed a lot of promise through a couple big league seasons. Calvin had 259 strikeouts in 238 innings and a 4.11 ERA. Had some elbow issues this past spring training and this past summer that really limited him and led to some surgery. But he's expected to be back. You think about Taylor Ward, who goes to the O's on the flip side. He'll turn 32 in December. Was part of a core that included Mike Trout and Joe Adell in the outfielder for the Halos. He slashed 237 with 61 home runs and 178 RBIs from 2024 to 2025, so over a 2-year span with the Angels. So really, we're us baseball fans, we're ready, we're excited, we want some movement with the hot stove, so we get it with the first trade of the off season.
Yeah, Taylor Ward's been a really good player for the Angels the last couple of years, and it feels like even going back to when they still had a healthy Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, it always felt like pitching is what was holding the Angels back. They would have a decent lineup a lot of years, but I think you'd have to go back. I mean, if you don't count Shohei Ohtani, I think you'd have to go back, a long time to find the last really good pitcher the Angels had. And obviously, like you said, it's a trade that looks like it's going to benefit both teams. The Orioles had some trouble scoring this year, so not a huge move per se with all the big name free agents that are out there. But at this point in the offseason, like you said, people are ready for the pieces to start moving, and hopefully this is just the beginning of what's to come, and uh, what we hope is a really exciting offseason.
Yeah, both teams with new managers going into next spring. Obviously, the Angels looking to make the postseason and get Mike Trout back there for just the second time in his career. The Orioles won the division 2 years ago and had one of the best records in baseball. Made some questionable moves for some experts at the trade deadline that really kind of sent things sideways, but they're looking at their way back to the postseason as well with a new skipper as well. Staying in Major League Baseball, and credit to Mo Patton for sharing us with us earlier this afternoon as the news broke via Marchand of the Athletic. MLB has landed new media deals with NBC, Netflix, and ESPN as it continues to restructure its TV future. That was announced this afternoon. The new agreements will give ESPN rights to out-of-market games for all 30 clubs and 6 in-club markets. NBC and Peacock will become the new home of the first round of the playoffs, and Sunday Night Baseball. Once again, NBC and Peacock will become the new home of the first round of the playoffs and Sunday Night Baseball, while Netflix will showcase the standalone opening day game, I believe, which is in San Francisco to start the year on this upcoming year. Also, that will be the first ever game of ABS, as ABS has been implemented in the big leagues. Netflix will also be home to the Home Run Derby at the Midsummer Classic up in Philadelphia at Citizens Bank Ballpark this upcoming summer, and the Field of Dreams game that will rehappen once again. The 3-year agreements were a direct result of ESPN opting out of the final 3 seasons of its contract in February. ESPN was due to pay about $1.65 billion over the next 3 seasons, but wanted to restructure its arrangement, including its annual hosting of Sunday Night Baseball, the first round of the playoffs, and the Home Run Derby. So According to sources, NBC and Peacock is expected to pay nearly $200 million per year, while Netflix will dole out about $50 million per season, and MLB will receive almost $750 million per year in total over the next 3 seasons. So a lot of money gets thrown around when it comes to TV networking. But NBC, Peacock, and Netflix, you will now find baseball on there moving forward.
Yeah, baseball's finally doing what they should have done a long time ago, which is expand its reach. Um, you know, there's no telling how many times during the season people complain that they're not able to watch their team, inside the market they live in just because, the game's blacked out or whatever. But, baseball's expanding its reach, and, people that actually like baseball have never complained about having too much baseball. So, even if it's not your team on, you're going to have a greater opportunity to, watch more teams in markets that you necessarily wouldn't have been able to watch before this.
Another sport's great job of globalization of its game and expanding to different networks and media markets. That is the NFL and Roger Goodell. And it was reported this afternoon, that the New Orleans Saints, according to a report from Jeff Duncan of NOLA.com, are expected to play a regular season game in Paris, France, over the next couple of years, according to their team president. This would be the first ever game of the NFL in France, at the stadium, I guess, Stade de France, which has hosted events such as the Olympics and the finals of the UEFA Champions League, and the World Cup. The stadium has a capacity of 81,338. Once again, we've talked about it, ad nauseum, Calvin, with the NFL globalizing its game. Played in Germany just this past week, with the Commanders and the Dolphins. They played in Mexico City. They played in Brazil, I believe this year, with the Chargers, and the Chiefs, and then last year with the season opener between the Eagles and the Packers. So the NFL continuing to globalize its game. I believe there are games on the docket to play in Australia, and as well in 2026. So Roger Goodell has made it a kind of a emphasis of his tenure as commissioner, to globalize the game and have games in international markets, and they continue to do that with France, and the Saints being on the next to the list.
And I don't know what the market is for football in France, but every other place the NFL has played, outside the country has been wildly successful. And you see pictures, and a lot of the times it's not even people that are fans of those two specific teams. They're just football fans, so they just show up in whatever football jersey they have just to finally get a chance to watch a game in person. And like you said, the NFL's done a really good job of expanding and globalizing the game over the last couple of years, and I would expect that the game over in France is going to be no different than the ones in Australia and Germany and all these other places that the NFL has played.
Yeah, absolutely. Staying in the NFL is officially announced. I believe Adam Schefter broke the news this morning that Shador Sanders will start for the Browns this weekend as they take on the Las Vegas Raiders, as Dylan Gabriel continues to recover from his concussion that he suffered this past weekend up in Cleveland at the Dog Pound as they lost to the Baltimore Ravens in an AFC North battle. Some sad news, though, in the NFC South with a young and promising quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., the second-year rookie, out of Washington, the Falcons signal caller. His season has come to a close. They are going to repair a partially torn ACL in his leg. He suffered that this past week, as the Falcons lost their home game, I believe, to the Carolina Panthers, with Kirk Cousins taking over under center there. Obviously, Atlanta has not had the season that is wanted under head coach Raheem Morris. They are 3-7, I believe. Remember, they traded their first round pick of this upcoming year's draft to the Los Angeles Rams, to draft James Pierce Jr. last year in the first round. So they're without a first round pick. Penix completed 60% of his passes this year for just shy of 2,000 yards. He had a 9-to-3 touchdown to interception ratio. So not really good news when you lose your franchise signal caller Calvin, who has had a history of some knee and leg injuries during his time in Indiana before transferring to Washington when he suffers an ACL injury.
Yeah, and um, I mean they've got some good wins. They beat the Bills and beat the Commanders pretty handedly. Without Jaden Daniels obviously, but um, you know, I Falcons fans probably didn't expect this year to go how it has. Um, but obviously losing Michael Penix for the year is just piling onto that. And the Falcons have had a rough go at things over the last couple of years, and Michael Penix was having a good year, so he probably at least gave some Falcons fans some hopes that um, he was gonna kind of be the quarterback of the future and be able to kind of lead a rebuilding Falcons team to some winning seasons in the future.
Transitioning to the world of the NBA, a player that had not been playing for most of the season, LeBron James is back for the Los Angeles Lakers. He made his season day last night as the Lakers defeated the Utah Jazz at Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles, 140 to 126. LeBron had 12 points and 13 assists in his season debut. Luka Doncic continued to marvel spectacular last night as Luka scored 37 points and dished out 10 assists. He's averaging just shy of 35 points a game at 34.6. And as he's played in 11 games this season, he's scored at least 35 in 7 of those. So, Luke's been doing great. And the show, who's off to a really good start to their season, near the top of the Western Conference, they get back one of the best players in NBA history with LeBron James taking to the court.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday when we talked about Giannis's injury news. The NBA is a star-driven league, and you want to have your star players on the court. And LeBron's arguably the best player in the history of the NBA. As first came back this year, he passed Reggie Miller on the all-time made three-pointers list, and obviously he's still playing at a high level, close to 40 years old, over 20 years in the league. And obviously that's a guy the Lakers want on the floor to go along with Luka and hopefully stack some wins and get back in the playoffs and make a run at the NBA Finals like they did a couple years ago.
They have a nice little three-headed monster going with Luka, with LeBron, if he's healthy and can remain healthy, and Austin Reeves. You add in DeAndre Ayton, and that's a nice little rotation that they have with Rui Hachimura as well. So the Lakers continuing to make some noise in the Western Conference with head coach JJ Redick, who was in his second season out in Los Angeles. Another team in the NBA that we mentioned yesterday. It's sad news for me as the resident Spurs fan of the broadcast. We picked up a win last night in Memphis, 111 to 101 was the final score there. The Spurs are off to a 10-4 start. We mentioned yesterday that they will be without a player that could easily be MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and probably Most Improved Player of the Year in Victor Wembanyama, who was out for a couple weeks with a calf strain. Well, it got worse for the Spurs last night as sophomore guard Stephon Castle, who was the NBA Rookie of the Year last year, exited with a hip injury in the loss to the Grizzlies and will be out for the next couple weeks. Castle had averaged 17.3 points, 5.8 rebounds, 7.5 assists, and 1.7 steals to start his second season in the NBA. A really talented player that formed a nice little backcourt duo with De'Aaron Fox. And you think about the Spurs, Calvin, we talked about it yesterday, there's a lot of budding and fresh talent on that roster. When you think about Wembanyama, what he could be, averaging nearly 30 points in his third season in NBA. You add in De'Aaron Fox, you add in Stephen Castle, you add in Dylan Harper, who was the number 2 pick this past summer out of Rutgers. The Spurs have a lot of pieces, but they have to be able to keep them healthy. Still, though, being off to a 10-4 start after not making the playoffs or the play-in game for that matter, really nice start for San Antonio. Hopefully they can get some of these guys back and keep them healthy for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, they've got the pieces to be a good team. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama is who kind of makes the team go, and like you said, he's when he's healthy, he's a candidate for MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. He's just a freak for how big he is and what he's able to do. But those younger guys like Stephon Castle, Derek Derek Harper, De'Aaron Fox. When those guys are all together, the Spurs have had a really tough run at things ever since. I feel like ever since Tim Duncan retired, and that core kind of broke up from all those championship years, and Greg Popovich kind of giving up his coaching duties. But off to 10-4 start, like you said, if the start is indicative of what the rest of the season looks like, as long as everybody's healthy, the Spurs might have a chance at a playoff run.
I hope so for sure. We mentioned yesterday our top story. During yesterday's show on Top 5 Tuesday, we mentioned that James Franklin had agreed to be the next head coach at Virginia Tech. Well, today was his introductory press conference in Blacksburg, Virginia, and just a couple highlights from his introductory press conference. He was also on the Pat McAfee show on ESPN for those that you were watching around the noon hour on ESPN. He had some questions and talked a couple things, particularly about filling out his staff. And his reliance maybe on the transfer portal window to fill out his first-year roster. When it comes to the transfer portal, quote, this is what Franklin said, I think you have to be careful. If you are a portal team, you live and die by the portal. Then every year you're going to have to live by the portal. You bring in 15 high school players and 30 transfer portal players. Most of those guys are seniors. They have 1 year, and all of a sudden you have to replace 30 guys. It's hard to even get out of that cycle. So it's going to be a high school development program that we are going to complement with the transfer portal, talking about how he's going to build out his roster in Blacksburg. And then he talked about his coaching staff. He said, I'm going to bring in the best fit for Virginia Tech. When he said, talking about his assistant coaches, we're going to have an opportunity to attract some of the best coaches in the country. And that will be in addition to spending time with the current staff, seeing who makes to keep sense with us. So James Franklin, a consensus among the media as a home run hire for Virginia Tech, considering their lay of the land in the ACC. So we will see how he does on the recruiting trail with National Signing Day for football athletes coming up here very soon, and one coming in the spring as well in that kind of January window. We are butting up against the 320 segment. We'll leave out that mission statement for another time. I'm sure Maurice will have some thoughts on that as well. It's 3:20. That means it's time for our friend and co-worker Blaine Keller to join us here after the commercial break to talk all things Titans. We got to ask Blaine, who in the heck is Cam Ward going to throw the football to now that Calvin Ridley is out for the season with a broken fibula? And obviously Chimere Dike and Ilick Ayamanor also went into the injury tent this past weekend at Nissan Stadium as well. So we'll talk to Sports BK after the commercial break, right after this on a Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Stick with us.
This holiday season, the largest lantern festival in the country returns to Nashville Zoo. Experience more than 1,000 all-new handcrafted lanterns, towering creatures, magical worlds, and the North Pole Village. At the center of it all, the Smashville Ice Rink. Welcome back to Zoolumination at Nashville Zoo. Bigger, brighter, and better than ever.
Nashville's Nutcracker, presented by Nashville Ballet, returns to TPAC November 29th through December 28th. This holiday season, audiences will journey with Clara and the Nutcracker Prince through Nashville's history and the land of sweets. Tickets on sale at NashvilleBallet.com.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Welcome back into Main Street Sports Today on a Wild and Wacky Wednesday, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. Joining us now from his respective home out in the Hermitage area, friend of the show and Main Street Sports co-worker Blaine Keller, joining us to talk all things Titans. Blaine, how we doing?
Yeah, doing good, guys. Please disregard the toppled over laundry basket in the background there. I was hoping it would not be in the shot, but my cat Gengar is a little bit stronger than I anticipated. He does not like the door being closed, so if I don't put it there, he kind of runs into it and opens the door. So outside of that, we are barricaded in and ready to talk some Titans football.
Absolutely. I hope Gengar is in the room. That's my favorite four-legged creature. Excited to see him on Saturday as we come over to your place. Blaine, let's dive right into it. This past weekend at Nissan Stadium, another loss for the Titans, this time to the division rival Houston Texans. I want to start things first with J.C. Latham, Blaine, if you will, and the offensive line. Not a very good day by J.C. by any standards. 3 false start penalties and a holding penalty. We talked last week with Ben Arthur about just that offensive line and the way they have been forming this year. Obviously, going into last week, the Titans led the league in sacks, I believe, given up. And not all of that has been on the offensive line's fault. Cam Ward has been the first to admit that he's probably held on to the ball too much at times as well. With that being said, where do you feel like we stand with J.C. Latham and his development? Obviously, after moving over from left tackle last year to right tackle this year, where do you feel like he is, especially after the injury?
It doesn't help him either that he's continuing to have a carousel of different coaches, right? I mean, he's got 3 guys right now that are technically the lead offensive line coach, with Matt Jones, Luke Stalker, and Scott Fuchs taking over for Bill Callahan in the offensive line room after Brian Callahan's dismissal. Bill Callahan said, "I'm out of here." So it doesn't help that one of the gurus of the game, whether you liked him or hated him when he was here, is out of the picture for J.C. Latham, especially after a positional change. He's been dealt a lot of adversity on top of that injury to start the season. It's a bit of a mixed bag on Sunday, I think, is how people viewed it. He had the penalties, but also up against a top elite edge rusher in Will Anderson. And he didn't allow, I don't think, any pressures in that game. Now, I mean, it's kind of an ebb and flow, give and take, whether or not you view it as a net positive whenever he's costing the team 5 to 10 yards anyways, based on the penalty. Also, the Titans had a couple of chip blocks on Will Anderson and a lot of help on him with the J.C. Latham to help prevent those pressures from happening. So I think it's still a wait and see type of thing. I don't think you can throw the book out on J.C. Latham at all, especially considering all the change that he's been thrown in his first 2 years in the NFL.
Playing with just about every starting wide receiver hurt, it feels like. Who are some guys that you could see kind of, filling in those starting spots? And, obviously, they're backups for a reason. And, even the starters haven't been great this year. But, how is Cam Ward going to try and, find these guys in openings this week against Seattle?
Yeah, they've got a positive sign with Chim Dike being a full participant in practice today. He was evaluated for a concussion near the end of the first half on Sunday, was also being evaluated for a chest contusion, but him being a full go on Wednesday is certainly a positive sign for him returning. And that's certainly the receiver that I think Cam Ward and the Titans need back the most with Calvin Ridley's injury, as well as Alec Iomanner. He's dealing with a hamstring, did not practice today. The Titans called up James Prochet, who was an interesting addition from the offseason and played pretty well in the preseason and in training camp. A lot of people thought before Chimere Dike was announced as the punt returner that James Prochet would be that guy. So whether that leans toward him playing more in the special teams side or it accounts for him taking some of the load off of the receivers. Prochet's a sixth-year player, has a lot of veteran experience to help Cam Ward out in that situation. Van Jefferson stepped in and played admirably, I'd say, on the outside for the Titans last week. The Ravenwood product did the best that he could given the circumstances. Of course, we mentioned Chim Dike. Everybody wants to know whether Xavier Restrepo will get this call up from the practice squad. The Titans have also signed a few guys that they might give looks to as we near and get closer to the end of the season here. But I think of the guys that are going to contribute on Sunday, you hope for Chim Dike and anticipate Van Jefferson and James Prochet getting active a little bit.
Blaine Keller of Main Street Media joining us here as we talk all things Titans. You can follow him on X at @sports_BK. And Blaine, I'm going to stick in that wide receiver room and I'm going to stick with Calvin Ridley. Obviously, he signed that monster deal after being a free agent coming over from Jacksonville, 4 years, $92 million, I believe, is the official totals on that. Is it kind of safe to say, though, that after this, injury, which is, a really kind of massive injury to recover from, especially with him being a wide receiver in his 30s, that we've kind of seen the last of Calvin Ridley here in Tennessee?
I don't know if I'd say the last of him. Maybe the last of him being what Calvin Ridley was, right? Of him being a productive receiver, whether that was at Atlanta or in Jacksonville or at times in his first season with the Titans. He's certainly not going to be the same receiver that he was. This is probably going to be a turning point for him in his career where he's going to have to learn to adapt a little bit, similar to a pitcher in Major League Baseball that loses his velocity. He can either hang it up or reinvent himself a little bit to try to figure out how to last a few more years in the league. So I think Calvin Ridley has been very explosive at times and can cut with the best of them in the NFL. And these hamstring and fibula injuries that he's been dealt this season, especially given with his age, may force him to adjust a little bit if he wants to continue his NFL career.
Blaine, I guess the rest of this season is all about Cam Ward, and it probably has been from the jump, his development and seeing those signs of improvement. And, you kind of mentioned and you just went through the list of the wide receivers that, he's currently working with. And by no means are those guys elite level wide receivers. How can we, I guess, judge his development and judge his progress when he's throwing to guys of that status, if that makes sense? Like, how can we determine it? If he's getting better and improving week by week, when that's the cast of characters. I mean, he's throwing to, you think about last week, throwing to Mason Kinsey, who's, probably a practice squad hero per se, but not a full-time NFL level starter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a fair point, David. I think it's certainly a caveat that you could give Cam Ward for the rest of his season. You could also, you just got to maybe diagnose the plays a little bit more that happen in these games from this point forward. If there's an interception that happens, could a, top end wide receiver like Carnell Tate or Jordan Tyson in this year's draft, could they have caught that ball that Cam Ward's throwing? In the event, let's say that it's intercepted and a B tier receiver like the Titans have right now is unable to haul it in. Other plays, I think you can still kind of give some criticism to Cam Ward at this point. It's been very turnover prone. No matter the cast of receivers or skill position players he's had trouble hanging on to the football. And whether that factors into guys getting open on passing concepts, whether it factors into the offensive line's protection, you can make excuses, but at the same time, I think Cam Ward would say, regardless of the circumstance, he has to be better. You could also make the excuse for the coaching staff and the fact that at times they really reel things in. And I think last week they had 4 pass plays that even tried to go beyond 20 yards. That's the personnel that they have, and that's what they're going to say is why they're doing it. But also you've got a guy that you've got to try to let loose a little bit here as it comes to a close as Cam Ward's first season wraps up.
Blaine, not that he's been great when he has played, but especially with L'Jarius Sneed out this week against Seattle, Jackson Smith and Jigba was the leading receiver in the NFL. He accounts for, I think, over half of Sam Darnold's passing yards so far. The Seattle is really balanced on both sides of the ball. But is there any chance that the Titans secondary can, at least slow down Jackson Smith and Jigba in that passing attack?
That is I think you could make a placeholder for that question, Calvin. Is there any chance that the Titans can stop this receiver in the NFL, their secondary? And more times than not, because of the hand that Denard Wilson has been dealt, defensive coordinator for the Titans, the answer to that is no. Darrell Baker made a good play or two on Sunday, and Jalen Armour Davis did the same to start the game against the Texans. That is about the best endorsement you could give for this Titans secondary for the last month and a half because of L'Jarius Sneed's injury, because of not having Jarvis Brownlee Jr. This secondary has been atrocious. And if Nico Collins is going to torch them up, Nico Collins is a great receiver. Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to do it all the more, especially coming off of a difficult performance against the Rams a week ago.
Yeah, I mean, Blaine, it's kind of a bad hand for the Titans that they're getting dealt this week because they're facing very much a motivated Seahawks team after a very disappointing game this past weekend out in LA against the Rams, who seem to have Sam Darnold's number not only last year in the playoffs when he was with Minnesota, threw 4 interceptions this past weekend. You kind of mentioned that the defense will stick there. How do you attack Sam Darnold specifically? He's a guy that has shown you that he can throw you the football at times. How do you attack him and get him uncomfortable and put some pressure on him? Having Jeff Simmons back is obviously huge. He played last week. The Titans defense played really well for portions of the game last weekend against Houston, albeit that last drive of the game. But it seems like that the defensive front at least did its job. How can they replicate that against Sam Darnold?
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey Simmons and Arden Key coming back from injury, if they can replicate their performance from a week ago, they certainly helped keep Davis Mills in check against the Texans. Of course, the Titans defense played well. You got to know it's against the backup quarterback, though, even though Davis Mills is one of the higher end second string guys. I thought Cody Barton played really sticky coverage in the first half against the Texans a week ago. He had 3 pass deflections and a 4th down sack to stop their first drive. If he can replicate that kind of performance, that being if the Seahawks try to go over the middle a lot and attack these linebackers, then that certainly could be a tip in Tennessee's cap. I said this on the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast and to our Titan insider, Terry McCormick, earlier in the week, to think that the Titans linebackers were one of the more questionable units going into the season. They've actually been one of the more consistent now. Cody Barton's kind of been in and out, but Cedric Gray is one of the top tacklers in the NFL. The defensive line, especially on the interior, Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat, big portions of success there. So I guess if there's a way to limit Sam Darnold, don't let him push the ball down the field. If you can keep it within 15, 10, 5 yards, maybe the defense stands a chance.
Blaine, I'm only going to ask you this because I want you to humor me. Along with the Colts and the Patriots, this is probably another one of those teams that the Titans are going to play this year that are equally as good on both sides of the ball. With all the injuries that the Titans are dealing with right now and, a bad offensive line, all those things, does this one have the chance to be the most lopsided result we've seen the Titans have this year?
That Colts game was really lopsided. The Texans game in Houston was really lopsided just because they didn't score any points. This game could be over pretty quick. That said, though, the Titans in week 2 hung with the Rams until the 4th quarter. So the NFL is such a week-by-week league. There's no way really of knowing sometimes what's going to happen. If the Seahawks kind of stumble in a little bit, then yeah, the Titans can hang around because they hung around in the first half with the Patriots, but then, of course, New England kind of ran away with it from there. That Indianapolis game, like you mentioned, was never close. It definitely has the potential, Calvin, to be a game that gets away from them quickly. Let's hope for those of us that are charged with watching the game from the press box that it is not. Let's hope that it's maybe a little more enticing than that.
Blaine Keller of Main Street Media joining us here on Wild and Wacky Wednesday, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Blaine, it's the first time we've had you on since the NFL trade deadline. I'd love to kind of get your opinion there. Do you feel like the Titans did enough when it comes to the trade deadline? Obviously, there are some pieces on this roster that could have been traded. Obviously, Chigo Okonkwo, Tony Pollard, the previously mentioned Calvin Ridley, pre-Fibia injury, all guys that could have been moved during the deadline. The Titans opted not to do that. Kind of give me your thoughts there. Maybe surprised that they didn't get moved, and talk about the returns that they got for the players like Darnus Jones. Obviously, Jarvis Brownlee and Roger McCreary were weeks before the deadline, but kind of talk about the return you thought they got there as well. Was it a good trade for them?
Calvin Ridley is a tough situation because more times than not, those midseason receiver trades don't typically work out for teams. The contract was going to be really difficult too to move him with 92 million halfway through that deal about at this point. I thought that Chigakonkwo would get traded. Talking with Chigakonkwo in the locker room right before the deadline, it seemed like he thought maybe he was going to get traded. Tony Pollard walked out of the locker room as if it was his last game. And it would have made sense in my mind for a running back needy team to take on Tony Pollard. Maybe they know more than we do, though, because he's not really been that productive at this point. Tajay Spears has been outplaying him since the trade deadline. So the Titans would have been wise if an offer existed to trade off Tony Pollard. Chigakonkwo is a tough situation. Of course, they need him to try to help out Cam Ward in the pass game. He's still the best tight end that they have at this point, though Gunnar Helm could challenge for that role by the end of the season. I thought that he was the most likely Titan to be traded. Draymond Jones was a good send-off to the Ravens because it's just a one-year deal, and if they make the playoffs, which it looks like they're trending toward doing, you get a higher draft pick out of that. So that was a good deal for them. And Roger McCreary and Jarvis Brownlee are still kind of questionable moves at this point. You don't really get a whole lot, and you've only hurt your defensive secondary in the process. So, Mike Borgonzi said it was a culture thing for Jarvis Brownlee Jr. How much better is this culture going to get that it could develop a troubled player in next year's draft? Like, are we so far away that that the Titans can't take a swing on a guy who has behavioral issues, maybe, which is what kind of was alluded to in that press conference? If so, it's going to be really difficult to try to draft really good football players that all have great character,
Blaine, I understand that, millions of dollars is a very good incentive to show up to work every day, but, just what's kind of the morale in the locker room, especially considering, in the offseason going into the year, just about everybody knew that this was not going to be a good football team. And, especially since we've been dealing with this since, the first month of the season where they were just, getting they were just getting the doors blown off them from the start.
I thought this past week, the vibe in the locker room was a little bit different because they were close in a game. They haven't been close in a game like that at home in a long time. So there was a lot of frustration in the locker room. Now typically after a home loss, you've got some downtrodden guys who are frustrated over the fact that they're still losing games. This was more so frustration that, man, we could have finally won one at home. We could have snapped a near 400-day losing streak at home at Nissan Stadium. We just shot ourselves in the foot so many times. It's not like Houston did all that much to win this game. We just kind of blew it. So that's kind of how it felt in the Titans locker room this week. I'll say Tennessee's been stuck in this cycle for the past couple of years. And at this point last year, Titans players said, at this point, we're playing for our own resumes because most of us are not going to be on this team next year. It's what they said last year, and they completely rehauled the roster. Probably will do the same this year. So if there's anything that those players are trying to play for at this point, it's to make sure that you can secure another contract, that you can find another spot on another team.
Blaine, before we let you go, you wrote a really good story this past weekend after the game about Mike Brown, the Titans safety, honoring his late cousin who died via apparent suicide on November 6th. Just kind of talk to us about that story, where people can find that, and just, it was really unique and a cool opportunity. So I know you're thankful for Mike Brown for taking the time to talk to you. Feel free to shed some light on that any way you can as we close out with you.
Yeah, first off, I mean, Nick Suss with the Tennessean got that, got it first there. The video of Mike Brown walking in to Nissan Stadium on Sunday wearing Marshawn Nealon's number 94 Dallas Cowboys jersey. Then I was fortunate to get to talk with Brown after the game in the locker room. He was nice enough to talk about, his relationship with Marshawn after his suicide. They were cousins with their dating to kind of their grandparents. They were same hometown, Grand Rapids, Michigan. They both played at Mac schools. Mike Brown at Miami of Ohio and Marshawn at Western Michigan. Football really connected these two guys. They talked through the pre-draft process for Neyland and had a connection since they figured out that they were cousins just a few years ago, while Neyland was committed to Western Michigan, and then just kind of held that connection off and on through the years till they both got to the NFL, and then of course Neyland tragically dying at the beginning of this month. Mike Brown was on IR up until this past week. He was elevated for his first game back. He ordered Marshawn Nealon's jersey and wanted to wear it in his honor for him and their family. Again, really grateful for Mike Brown for sharing that story and his openness in that. That's on Main Street Media, TN.com, TitanInsider.com. You can find all of that there as well. It's in print at Main Street, Nashville.
Blaine, we appreciate you stopping by on short notice and filling in for a guest for us. Always good to talk with you. We'll catch up with you down the road. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Coming up here as we close the show on Wild and Wacky Wednesday, it's Calvin's favorite segment. Just look at his face. He is ready to go. We spent a lot of time searching the web for it. It's our Wild and Wacky segment as we deliver you just a couple of the wildest and the wackiest stories from across the globe. And a little hint, there might be one from Chapel Bill and head coach Bill Belichick of the North Carolina Tar Heels coming up right after this on Main Street Sports Today. So stick with us.
The winning just got closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mid Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs.
Winning just got closer.
Being in Tennessee, we wanted to try to keep it as local as possible, so we have an entire section of our menu that is just dedicated to local whiskeys like Uncle Nearest, Jack Daniels, of course, George Dickel, Nelson Brothers, Greenbrier Whiskey, and all of our taps are all local. From 2 o'clock until midnight, we've got food every day for you guys. A good handful of appetizers, some entrees, and a couple salads and things like that. My name is Ethan Kanata. Please come down and see us at the Pick Lobby Bar here at the Omni in Nashville.
There's a line that links us all. Most of the time, we don't even think about it, but it's everywhere. Illuminating our neighborhoods, empowering our businesses, and helping us to recharge. Whether it comes from our grids, the sun, or a kind heart, we believe in the power of good energy. And as your family and region continue to grow, you can trust that we'll always be there for you. Middle Tennessee Electric, bringing good energy.
Final segment on a Wednesday. Welcome back into Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. David Wilson, that is Calvin White. Before we round out the show with our weekly Wild and Wacky segment, it's never too late for some breaking news or a press release when it comes to this show. When you're with a couple of sports writers, just text it in our group message of this show. It was just announced by Major League Baseball in an email that the Milwaukee Brewers and the Atlanta Braves will play in the MLB's annual Dual League Classic this upcoming season next summer on Sunday, August 23rd, up in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. That game will be at 7:10 p.m. Central Time, or excuse me, Eastern Time, 6:10 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. Obviously, last year it was the Mets and the Mariners making the trip up to Williamsport. Obviously, it's a really cool event, Calvin. My father is a really big advocate and watcher of the Little League World Series, and it's always nice to see those kids from cities across not only the United States but the country as a whole, right? To be there, to have the big leaguers come watch them play, to have those kids then go watch the big leaguers, a really cool community event that globalizes the game. That everybody that I've heard, through TV or interviews say it's a life changing process, right? Say that a big league came and watched your game and then vice versa and just spend some time with them. That's great. You think about the stars that players are able to see. Think about the kids from Latin America being able to see Ronald Acuna Jr. up close and personal. That really means a lot. You think about the stars from the Milwaukee Brewers. You think about William Contreras. You think about Jackson Churio. Obviously, Matt Olson for the Braves. There's a lot of, just not only Latin American culture as well, but some stars from the United States as well. That's going to be really good for those kids to see up close and personal next summer in Williamsport.
Yeah, those guys are all guys that I would assume a bunch of those kids want to grow up and be like, to be professional baseball players. And like you said, just for those kids to get that opportunity to play in front of those big leaguers and stuff like that, and kind of show what they have. That's definitely would be a life changing an opportunity and a good memory to say or to look back on later and say you got to play in front of some big leaguers.
Yeah, absolutely. So really looking forward to that next summer. Once again, the Milwaukee Brewers and the Atlanta Braves in the MLB Little League Classic on August 23rd. That is a Brewers home game. So the Brewers will lose just one of their home dates from American Family Field. And it's really cool. And I promise we're going to get into the Wild and Wacky segment really here shortly. The last 2 years now, considering, last year and this upcoming year, the Braves have been part of some really cool deals. The Braves are part of the Speedway Classic up at Bristol Motor Speedway this past summer, with the Cincinnati Reds that got rained out that Saturday night. Unfortunately, was able to play Sunday. So the Braves have been part of some really cool deals, and it's nice to have them on the national stage. With that, all that being said, it is time for our Wild and Wacky segment that we close every Wednesday show with. Calvin has divulged the web and found some of the wildest and wacky stories from across the globe. And without further ado, I pass the baton over to him.
Yeah, you teased this first one a little bit before the commercial break, and I saw this morning, and I sent it to you guys, and I knew it'd be perfect to put in Wild and Wacky. And obviously Chapel Bill and Bill Belichick and his girlfriend Jordan Hudson have kind of made the rounds this year, this football season. Bill Belichick, at the ripe age of 73 years old, is apparently watching his girlfriend, who is a part of a co-ed adult cheerleading squad. I also didn't know that until I saw this. But Bill Belichick, at the ripe age of 73, is watching an adult co-ed cheerleading competition.
Now, how old is she again? I believe she's in her late 20s, like we are. Let's see how old she is.
I want to say she's younger than that.
She's younger than us?
Google says she's 24.
She's 20. Oh, Lord have mercy. Yeah. I mean, so I can see how that is stuff she is still involved in. I mean, she just now exited, college age for, just, undergraduate. And, it's a funny relationship to divulge on. I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I don't know, and I don't want to speak for her. I don't want to be like inappropriate. I don't know if it's a money grab or what, but I don't know. But it's a very interesting relationship that has been shed in the media very much with memes and on social media, whether it's X or Instagram. So they just continue to dig deep. I mean, that photo of them on the beach together, with the pose, and I'm like, oh, it's just a lot. It's a lot, and with him not having the success at North Carolina initially that he wanted, obviously how much his legacy changed, Calvin. Like, if Bill Belichick walks away from New England the same time that Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay, I think we consider him the greatest coach of all time, and he still probably is. But after Tom Brady left, it kind of took a hit those last couple years with the Patriots, and now jumping down to the college level, it's just a lot that has surrounded him since those glory days when he was with the Patriots and Tom Brady.
Yeah, and I still think he's the best NFL coach of all time. But like you said, it's one of those things where if he would have walked away, that would be the only thing we think of him as. And now, all the stuff with North Carolina and Jordan Hudson and stuff like this is, I wouldn't say tainting his legacy, but it's becoming what we associate him with. And like, what do they even talk about? Like, Bill Belichick has Super Bowl rings older than her.
Yeah, I don't know what they have in common. Yeah, 24 years old. She's born in 2001, so we are older than, or I am older than Jordan Hudson. So,
I'm not.
I don't remember how they met, and I'm not gonna pretend. Like I said, I've seen the memes and the videos. I don't want to pretend to know how they met, but goodness gracious, it's crazy.
Yeah, so we had to get our Chapel Bill story in today, but that moves us into our next Wild and Wacky that takes us to our first world record of this Wild and Wacky Wednesday. A Swedish man named Martin Strobe broke the Guinness World Record for the number of matches he put up his nose. He put 81 matches up his nose. The old world record was 68, so he beat it by 13 matches. I don't know how long this took. That doesn't look very comfortable, and who knows how long it's going to take to get all of those out.
Looks very uncomfortable. Don't know how he breathes, I guess, through his mouth, but not something that I would do. But we have a love for the show for guys that chase after the world records and want to get their name in the book. So I appreciate the effort. I would never do anything like that, but I it's just wild. I'm sorry. No, lost for words once again, as I normally am during this segment, because I'm like, people really do that. Like, people will really do that, but they do.
Producer Mark says in the chat it would be more impressive if he lit them. I'm surprised none of them did light, with as much as they're touching and rubbing together right there.
Yeah, that's very true, and that would cause definitely a catastrophe.
Yeah. Well, we have multiple world records this week. This one's probably our most wild and wacky. This man rides a unicycle with 7 bowling balls, or while holding 7 bowling balls, to break a world record. Says a night out at a pizzeria led to an Idaho man breaking the Guinness World Record for the most bowling balls carried on a unicycle. This is our friend David Rush, who's known for breaking these wild world records. Says he was eating pizza at a restaurant when a highlight reel of unusual world records on the TV screens caught his attention. So he broke the world record for bowling balls, I guess, carried while riding a unicycle.
That's dangerous, and I say that because if you drop it straight down on that foot, it's over with. You're going to be in the boot for a couple weeks or maybe a month or so. But he has been a frequent contributor to this segment, to the show, so I appreciate the effort. But I don't even know if I could do the unicycle. I don't know if I'm talented enough to do that and to pedal, let alone hold that and have the grip to hold 7 bowling balls against my chest and in my arms. So I appreciate the effort, and I'm impressed by it, to say the least.
Yeah, and it doesn't say if these are, how heavy the bowling balls are, but obviously
Well,
if he's
I
out.
was trying to read it while the video played. I assume they're not too heavy, to say the least. But
Yeah.
I appreciate the effort.
Yeah, but we'll move really quick into our last couple wild and wacky stories. A Maine gym teacher sinks 1,516 3.1 hour. to break the world record. I can't imagine the stamina that would take. And, that seems like a number that you would have to, shoot consecutively and just not stop for 1 hour.
Yeah, I respect the hustle. I'll say that. I mean, he looks a little tired right there. He was committed to the process. He's got the jersey on and everything. He's not in sweatpants and a t-shirt. He's got the full outfit on. Obviously, this is very much coordinated. You got a full team effort right there to relay it. I guess ball doesn't lie. Shooter's going to shoot. Um, as a sports guy, I like this. I'm committed to this. I like it.
It says he made 1,516 of his 1,683 attempts. So he's keeping the field goal percentage high.
Yeah, I'm about to say that's impressive. I mean, Lord knows I'd be missing a ton of them. So he stood straight away from the top of the key and he knocked him down. So I'll give him credit, a very deserving world record.
We'll run through this last one really quick. The headline reads, Town pleads for return of beloved local mannequin. Tourism officials in a small South African town are asking for tips about the disappearance of a beloved local landmark, a mannequin swimming in the dam just outside town. So their town mannequin went missing from their swimming pool, and they're trying to get it back.
Somebody stole it. They took off with theft. So I don't know. What are you gonna do with the mannequin? I don't know. People take stuff for these weird reasons, to say the least. I don't know what any desire you would have to steal that. But nonetheless, people do what they do.
You can just never have nice things.
Can't ever have nice things. All right, close the show. 1 minute left before the 4 o'clock hour. Thanks again for always for diving across Wild and Wacky Wednesday topics. Help us fill our final segment. There will be no show next Wednesday as we're rating, I guess, a day early for the Thanksgiving holiday. So Calvin will be back on Tuesday. I am done for the rest of this week. Wade really will be filling it in for me tomorrow, and I will be gone all next week. My normal days are Wednesday and Thursday. So we will see you when we see you. We hope you guys have a good rest of the week. Catch up with us for some Friday night football on Friday. Looking forward to texting you guys. I guess see you then.